Okay, so the first thing that we see when we come to the side of the house, we always start at the side of the house where there's a fence with no gate, then we work our way around the house. So this is our starting point. The first thing, we got a septic aerator, and then your septic tank is right over there. Now, in Louisiana, we're not required, nor do we inspect septic systems because they're underground. But if we see things that may need attention, we do note that in the reports. So if you notice all this soil is dug out, looks like it was recently done here and here at the aerator. We're gonna note that there's possible previous repairs at the septic system, and I just need to verify what went on in this area. If there's any warranties, what happened, all the good stuff like that. Also right here, we've got a clean out that is damaged and doesn't have a cap on it, so that needs to be replaced. Simple fix. On to our air conditioner. The first thing right off the bat that we notice are these bricks under here that the condenser's sitting on. That's not very stable, especially that brick here. There it is. That is turned sideways. So this is not a stable surface. This will make your condenser eventually come out of level with, you know, high winds. It could knock it off this pad, could damage the condenser. If it does get out of level but still operates, it could wear out the fan motor faster. So those are things that we do note as just minor improvements. The condenser is dirty. If you look up under at all these fins, you can see that it is dirty. Right here, we've got some of the conduit pulled loose, so we have exposed electrical wiring at the fan motor. That just needs to be resecured and corrected. We come down to our condenser data tag. This is where we're gonna get all of our info. So this one is a ream unit. Ream's nice enough to put the date right there, so you don't have to be a detective and try to decipher it through the serial number. But the serial number also always does display how old it is. So 2015, so 7/2015 says July 2015 when it was manufactured. If you look in the serial number, 7/15. So that's how you would tell. It's a 4-ton unit. You look at the model number for anything that can divide by 12. So 48 divided by 12, it's a 4-ton unit. All right. Other information we need off here is what type of refrigerant. So we've got 410A refrigerant. That's good. That's not R22, which is the outdated stuff. This stuff is what you want to see. Also, the max fuse or breaker is a 45 amp. The minimum is 35 amp. I'm down here. This is our liquid refrigerant line. This is our suction refrigerant line. So this one's cold, this one's warm. This one's gonna have gas, this is gonna have liquid. Our suction line needs to be insulated. And then this hole in the, where it goes through the wall, we need to seal that so bugs and such don't get in there. The reason this needs to be insulated is because it's cold, so it's gonna sweat a lot and it's gonna lose energy if it's not insulated, especially in our climate. So here's some of that old insulation there and just needs to be replaced. On these refrigerant ports, we need some tamper-resistant locking caps. Since refrigerant's a controlled substance, you're required to have those. 9 out of 10 times they're not there, but when you get your unit serviced, the HVAC guy can put those on for you. I'm gonna make sure that conduit's not loose. Good. Come up here to the disconnect. Now we see this. That's gonna be from that panel, so I bet it don't have a cover on it. Open this up, and yes, no cover. Also, there's no disconnect puller. That's a defect. You gotta have a disconnect at this condenser. So they've bypassed the disconnect, running to, this is something from the utility company. It said Dimco on there somewhere, and it's got a little seal, so we'll note that. We're not gonna open that because of that seal. You don't wanna tamper with it. But we bypassed the disconnect, that's a defect. You need to have a disconnect here, so we're gonna write that up, and then this whole panel needs to be cleaned out. There needs to be a bushing back there as well. So that's a few things on this side right off the bat when we just started. So we should have a pretty interesting inspection today. On to the front of the structure. The first thing we notice, we have an EIFS system. So that is a styrofoam board with a stucco finish over it. How do we know it's an EIFS system? Well, the house was built in '96, which is around the time frame when EIFS was very popular. But if you come up to the EIFS and you push on it, it has a little bit of give. I don't know if you can see that. If you tap on it, it sounds hollow. So that's how we know it's an EIFS, okay? So these are problematic. This is also the time frame that they were installed where they had the most problems, but we are covered. So I don't suspect any kind of moisture intrusion to be behind this wall yet, but It's possible, I guess, but unlikely. But there are some areas where it could happen, such as this joint right here between the EIFS and the brick. It's not sealed, so we need all of this to have a good sealant joint. Ideally, you would put a closed cell backer rod and then put sealant over it. That should have been done with the installation. Also, on all of our porch columns, the EPS trim, which is styrofoam, expanded polystyrene, it cannot touch concrete flat work, has to have 2 inches of clearance. Again, covered, less likely to have water intrusion, but still possible. More importantly, it's touching the ground. So it cannot touch the ground for moisture wicking purposes. Also, termites can get up under there and eat that column up, and you'll never have any idea that that happened. So that, we're going to call that out, needs further evaluation and correction if necessary, but more than likely it's going to need to be corrected. So all these moisture stains on it, we'll also note that. Also, you notice we have some cracks in the finish. That could also allow water intrusion. If you knock on the EIFS and you're still unsure, because maybe it's a little more firm, doesn't give quite as much as you would be expecting, you can come look at any kind of penetration in the EIFS and see if it has any kind of give. So if we look at this mount here, you see how that's depressed in. Stucco would not do that because it's much harder, cement based. This being a foam board will have a depression. So there's your second indicator that you have an EIFS system. So home buyers, realtors, anybody that's looking at a house and you want to know if you have stucco or EIFS, look for stuff like this in addition to knocking, tapping, pushing. All those things will help you identify what type of system you've got. If they don't have penetrations with depressions in there like that one does, there are other ways to tell, and sometimes the system will just give you a layup to where you can just easily determine what kind it is, and this would be an example of that. So the doorbell's missing, so you can look directly into the system. So you see fiberglass mesh, which is this stuff here. That is EIFS all day long, because stucco does not use this, it uses a metal lap. Also, if you look in the hole, you can see the styrofoam. So look for things like this too. That needs to be repaired for sure. Replace the doorbell, seal it up. But just another way to identify the cladding. Now we're on to the left side of the structure, and this was actually something that existed on the right side as well. I just didn't mention it in the video, but in our brick veneer, we don't have any weep holes. So every 33 inches, I believe, there should be a weep hole, which would be this mortar would be missing from one of, every 33 inches in the brick veneer at the very bottom. That's to weep out moisture that gets behind the brick, because brick is porous. You will get water back there, so you want to have weep holes to drain that water out. Now we're on to the back of the structure at the electrical system. So this is our electric meter. When it's a service drop, meaning it comes in, the service wires come in from the utility pole. We follow, or I like to follow the service wires and see where they're going. So when we do that, we notice that right here, the service wires are not high enough above the ground. So this could easily be touched, grabbed by anyone. I mean, especially a kid, they're curious, don't know any better maybe. They need to be 10 feet above the ground, so that you can call the utility company and have them come adjust that, since those are their wires. Now we are on to the electric panel, and if you remember on the back side when we were looking at the meter, below it was a generator transfer switch, which was installed after this home was built, and that transfer switch is now the main panel, so that's directly on the other side of this wall. This is the old main panel, which is now a sub panel because that transfer switch was installed. Whenever the main panel is converted to a sub panel, you have to separate your neutrals and grounds, and very, very rarely is that done correctly after someone has a generator installed. So our grounds are all these bare copper wires that are on this ground bus bar. All of our neutrals are these white wires that are on the neutral bus bar. Okay, if you come down here, you have a bonding strap, which is going to be this guy right here. That's connecting those two bus bars. This strap needs to come off. It needs to be removed so these neutrals and grounds are not connected, And then the ground bus bar needs to be bonded to the panel enclosure. So you'd put a green screw right there. You could also put a strap that just connects it to that panel enclosure. So this is a very common defect to see when a homeowner has a transfer switch installed. So if you are getting a transfer switch installed and it's going to be your main panel, make sure you tell the electrician to set your main panel up like a sub panel.